Well, for more on the internationalization of UN, I'm joined by William Lee. He's joining us live from Los Angeles. He's the chief economist at the Milken Institute. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Susan.
RMB clearing banks set up in the US, Russia, and other countries. What does this say about the wider use of UN globally?
Well, it tells you that the power of China as an international economy has really come into fore. Introducing the renminbi into the basket shows the IMF and the international community recognizes how important China is to global trade, not just as a strong, large domestic economy. And I think that's the signal that all currency traders and all investors are getting, which is that China is a force to be reckoned with in the international community.
So how has the inclusion into the SDR affected the currency internationally?
Well, by becoming a more accepted medium of exchange, people are able to settle trade, as your reporter just said. And by settling trade in the domestic currency, the greater international use of the renminbi makes it more acceptable as a medium of exchange, just like the dollar was and is. In fact, the decline of the dollar as importance of trade shows the rise of China in the importance of trade, especially in the new Silk Road and the One Belt, One Road initiative, which will even further increase the global trade need of the renminbi. Because don't forget, China is becoming more important because most of global trade flows used to go to the advanced economies, US and Europe and so on. But now as the large economies are slowing down, China has become the new hub of global trade. And as more and more trade goes toward China and within China's supply chain, greater use of the renminbi is expected to grow even faster.
Yeah, it's interesting. Oil-producing countries like Iran, Venezuela, and even Russia have decided to settle their energy exports in UN, mainly for the purpose of asset security. What does this mean for the currency?
It means that the currency is going to have a reserve role. A reserve role means that global central banks and global investors are going to look toward the renminbi as a safe haven, a place where you can store value and count on the value staying where it should be. And I think as a currency becomes more important in that role, its use is going to expand, and the determinant as to how much a currency is used is ultimately how strong the trades are across various countries and how strong the domestic economy is. Right now, with all the innovation that's going on in China, with all of the global opportunities not as attractive as China, more and more capital is flowing into China to take advantage of those growth opportunities. There's more innovation going on in China now than anywhere else in the world. If you look at even financial transactions, $8 trillion are done by electronic payments, whereas only, say, $100 billion is done by electronic payments in the US. So even in the growth of fintech, China has become a source of innovation, recognizing that global investors are more and more piling into those growth opportunities in China, which means more demand for the use of renminbi.
And compared to the US dollar, how do you expect it to fare in the short to medium term?
Well, in the short term, the dollar will ultimately still be the dominant trading currency because the size of the US and the long historical prominence of U.S. economy and U.S. as a safe haven is still there. On top of that, the U.S. is normalizing its monetary policy, which means that interest rates are expected to rise slowly over time in the U.S. So there is going to be a natural attraction for the U.S. dollar in the near term. But looking further, going, say, 5 to 10 years into the future, that's where the likely trends indicate that the renminbi and the dollar will start to reverse themselves so that the renminbi will become more prominent and possibly the dollar will become less prominent, or some of the other advanced economies will become less prominent, the Japanese yen or the euro relative to the renminbi, because as I said, all the growth opportunities are in China right now, and looking forward, they're likely to grow faster in China than anywhere else in the world. And when growth opportunities are growing, that's where the demand for the currency starts to be growing as well.
The demand for consumer goods at home in China and abroad has really rebounded this year. What else has contributed to the foundation for strengthening the yuan?
I think the investment vehicles in China have also become a key player because as the China consumer market starts to grow, more and more innovations are taking place there. Didi is a great example of a company where it's just grown phenomenally. It's the second largest transportation application outside of Uber. Well, that's a kind of innovation that brings in more investment dollars. And as more investment dollars come in, that just grows the market further and increases income and increases consumer demand in China as well. So that kind of dynamic is a very positive growth dynamic. And the likelihood is China is going to continue that growth dynamic. We at Milken, for example, put out a report that China's best performing cities. Surprisingly, to some people, it's not Beijing, it's not Shanghai, it's Chengdu. Why is it Chengdu? Because in the central western parts of China, shows where the tremendous innovation is taking place. It's got a great mixture of talented people, a diverse set of industries, great location, so that you have a lot of industries investing in Western China now, where the real opportunities are yet to be taken advantage of, as opposed to some of the larger cities in China like Shanghai and Beijing, where a lot of the opportunities are already well exploited. That, again, will boost the demand for the Chinese currency.
William Lee, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for joining us from Los Angeles with the Milken Institute.